Welcome to At His Feet podcast for the day. We are grateful that we have another opportunity to have this conversation. And our today's conversation is actually on the existence of God. You know, we both have a burden to explain how reality is shaped. This we will do today by looking at the both sides, both the theism and atheism. If we must do that, we must do it with respect to each other and only allow facts to be the judgment standard, not the tone, the sound, and or aggression. The reason we are here is to have a sober discussion on God's existence with an aim to help our viewers to appreciate the biblical position that God exists outside of space, time, and matter in relation to the alternative reasoning against the same. And to help us have this discussion today, we have an amazing panel of three brothers and one sister. Great. Now, I want to bring a very unique perspective here, especially for the theologians, but I will also be expecting Maurice to come on board. Now, what if Christians, okay, let me put it this way. Why should we defend the existence of God? Why should Christians defend the existence of God? If we are convinced that He is existing, what will be the danger of just allowing Maurice to talk about it? And we just don't defend. So we don't have to defend. The Holy Spirit will. I think you said the Holy Spirit is working in us.
I think, well, to start off, number one is because if we take the Bible to be true for what it is saying, then we have an invitation by God, not both, but by God, to be loving enough to our neighbors, to share to them the truth about the existence of God, because, of course, of the implications thereof also. So that I don't think it is a loving thing to see somebody, if you are convinced of what you are saying to be true, I don't think it is a loving thing to just let them be without sharing to them. Of course, again, with respect, without sharing to them the truth. But more importantly, remember when I began, I said that this question hinges on the nature of reality. That is, reality is such that either there is a God or there isn't. Now, the implication of that is this. If God exists, there's a way in which reality is. And if God does not exist, there's a way in which reality is. Mm-hmm. The question is, does reality lead us to seeing whether that there is a God or there is no God? And let me give you an example. People have already appreciated that if there is no God, life would be utterly meaningless. That is to say, at the end of the day, even if you create your own meaning, even if you decide to do your own small thing here, at the end of the day, you are delusional. Because we are all ending up in the same place, isn't it? We are all going to die and we are going to disappear. So if God does not exist, it doesn't make a difference if I am a Hitler or I am a Mother Teresa. It doesn't make a difference if I study or I don't study. At the end of things, and notice I'm not saying now, there could be a difference for someone who studies now. But at the end of the day, if there's no God, then it is the person who studied, the person who was nice, the person who was moral, is equally the same as the person who was a killer, a murderer, and all these things. So I think it matters. Because if then there is no God, then we are wasting our time. And we have no business even of doing science, for example. Because what is the value of science? You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
What is the value of, making life better? If at the end of the day, we are coming to the same conclusion. So you understand what I mean?
I understand.
So if reality is, and I think reality is such that God exists, then the question becomes utterly important.
Right.
We cannot live our lives as if they are meaningless, as if they are purposeless, and of no value.
And actually, we are not defending the existence of God.
Okay, go ahead and then I'll bring it. Yes, go ahead.
We are not defending the existence of God. The existence of God is actually our default setting. Not only for Christians, but for everybody.
Except me.
No, even you, because first of all, you have come up with a definition of somebody called God, and you have whom you don't know, and you have concluded.
I've read him in the Bible.
You have read about him in the Bible, and you have concluded that that person does not exist.
Logically, yes.
Logically, does not exist. And I've given you an example. There are a lot of things that logically we can't explain, but that does not mean we don't believe in them. Simple things, flying in a plane. Logically, do you know, most of us do not know how a plane, a huge plane, maybe a smaller one engine plane, you might think, okay, maybe the wind can take it up. But there's a huge plane carrying 500 plus people plus with luggage. And it takes off the ground, stays in the skies for 10 hours before it comes down again. Logically, do you know?
It's counterintuitive, obviously.
Do you know how it works?
No.
You will not know, but you still believe.
So, but I will not say, I don't know how it works, therefore God. I will.
No, I'm not attributing to God. You are saying, my point is, you don't have to know everything logically to believe in it. Because you guys, you deny the existence of God because it does not make logical sense, right? And I'm telling you, there are a lot of things that do not make logical sense to us, or to most people, but they still believe in it. Like, for instance, if I went, sorry for using my mom, if I went home, the village, and I started explaining to my mom how this sanctuary, this church, this building has been put up. And I tell her, no, mom, the foundation was, don't know how many feet down, then they did concrete, they did this, and there's this pillar. Honestly, and there's wiring. She will get lost. I mean, in fact, it will be a waste of time. But you ask her, Mom, do you think that building was built? She will say, yes, somebody built it. Do you know how she did it? How the person did it? No. So, my friend, the fact that you cannot logically explain something, it does not mean, therefore, that thing is not true or doesn't exist. Now, to say that we don't know, of course we know. How do we know? Because the God who created the earth and everything in it has also chosen to tell us how he did it. Now, you may disagree that maybe the guys who wrote it, they were writing works of fiction. That's what
they say. The artist says the Christians use what they are calling circular reasoning.
Circular reasoning.
Circular reasoning when it comes to the Bible, that we are assuming what we are proving.
You're starting with the conclusion,
yes.
And then now.
We start the conclusion. God created.
Call it a creation. So let me now show the creation.
Yes.
But okay, even without calling it creation, certainly all of us will agree that the world had a source.
Probably, yeah.
No, it can't be probably because it exists. Since it exists, most certainly it had an origin.
I'm actually coming to that.
That's a claim.
I'm actually coming to the creation. It's a whole beautiful thing. I want us to discuss that. Maybe if I can bring Linsa here. Linsa, the bit that why are we spending all this time to prove all that God exists?
Concerning the same. If a layman asks me from outside that, do you think that you should defend your God? As a person, I will stand up and say, yes, I think I need to defend my God. But in reality, God can defend himself. Because God doesn't need like his creation to fight for him. Because we are really fully dependent on him in a way that he's the one who protects us and also saves us from all the situations. So let me have at least one biblical reference. I'm going to read. The Bible says in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, always be ready to give a defense of the faith that is in you. That is what the scripture tells us. So when I'm approached by either Muslim who wants to hear about my faith, at this position, I'm going to give it my all to defend the faith that I have in Jesus. And that is what also Paul was also proclaiming about the faith, what changed him and how he became into faith.
So maybe Maurice is not really imposing, but maybe Christians are just following through the.
Yeah, like the case of Paul. Actually, you should define faith at some point because I don't think Paul had faith. Paul knew. You know, I don't have faith you exist. I know you exist.
Yes.
But if I had not met you yesterday and someone told me about you, I would have to believe you exist. So the fact that Paul had a Damascus experience, Paul knew God exists. Paul saw God. Paul had God. So Paul did not have faith. His level of conviction would be
How
very
do you
high.
know that?
Because if the story is true, then Paul saw God.
Because his
isn't it?
definition of faith is
Belief without evidence.
evidence.
So Paul had me is the one who
But
believed in God.
we believe with evidence.
No, you can believe with or without evidence. You can believe for good reason. You can believe for bad reason.
Maybe to be.
And-
sorry.
Yes,
He's finishing.
Yes, you're finishing.
Yeah, that's the one I wanted to say.
I really wanted you to follow up with that bit of Paul.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Paul had there is knowing and there is believing. So believing, you don't have. Once you have evidence, you know it becomes knowledge.
Yes.
And that is what faith talks about. But the contrary to that, if you want to be convinced of a claim without evidence, you'd have something called a belief. And to correct
That's
that,
what
not
you
to
call faith.
Yeah, that's what we call faith. Faith is, by definition, is belief without evidence. Because if you have evidence, then it's knowledge. There's something she talked about defending God. I don't think you're defending God. I think you're defending your belief in God. Yeah, and as you correctly said, if God exists, he wouldn't.
That is why I
need you to
used
defend.
the term layman's
Yeah.
understanding. Yeah.
So I think what people are defending is their belief in God, their conviction.
Okay.
They are trying to, and I think it's as you said, it's actually an argument where even he said that when you come as a Christian, you start by the default setting that God exists. And I think that affects the whole judgment because that's once you start with the conclusion, then your process becomes impaired. You don't become fair to the process. You should start with a blank page. And then now you start to evidence for God, evidence against God, and you be open to go either way on where the evidence will lead you.
Who does that?
Anybody.
Who comes with the blank?
No one comes with a blank
Blank.
slate.
Who comes with?
But we agreed the default position is we don't know.
You see,
But
even
that's still a statement.
Yeah.
Is that a statement of fact?
Yeah. That should be a statement. For any claim, not just claim of God.
Yeah, for any claim.
Any claim.
So is that a statement of fact?
Yeah, that's a statement of fact.
That for everything we don't know.
For everything, we should start with the assumption that we don't know. Otherwise, if we start with the assumption that we know, then we will have no interest in trying to follow the evidence that will lead us to knowing. So we have to start with the assumption that we don't know. And only knowledge, and only evidence should guide us, and not our prior assumptions and whatever. And that's why I even told you that I don't think most people follow that process, especially in Kenya, where you are brought up in a Christian family. You don't have time to interrogate your beliefs logically. You just know we are Christian, we go to church on Saturday, we do this. It's a culture. The religion is intertwined with culture and everyday life. It's become difficult to logically.
Now with that statement.
So Jared and then Maurice.
Yeah, with that statement that we should start from a position of we don't know. You are also assuming that every human being has the ability to do his own independent research and discover whether God exists or not. Would that be your position?
No, not everybody has. As he said that ideally, then only the theologians who are professors would be.
Yes,
entitled
would be
to
Christians.
believe in it,
Yeah.
because they're the one who have done.
They have to
the
prove
research work.
everything.
No, because like you see, like I believe if I take a painkiller, it's going to heal me. I'm going to be well. I don't have to know how the process of research, the chemical formulas in it. I just need to use it and it works on me. I don't have to know the background information. But the issue is, does it work?
Yes.
So Jared, you wanted to
Yeah,
finish
so-
that point, and
yeah,
then I
let
want to
me
bring
finish.
Mark.
So if somebody has done the donkey work, he has done the work, has already built a bridge, and people have been using that bridge to cross the river. Would you still insist that I want to find out how this bridge was constructed, who provided the money, where the resources come from, or will it be more important to you that now finally you can cross the river?
It would be more important to me that the bridge is there because I can see the bridge. I wish the evidence for a bridge, we had the same amount of evidence for God as we have for a bridge.
Oh, so then your position is we do not have sufficient evidence for the existence of God.
Exactly.
But do we have sufficient evidence for his non-existence?
No. That's why my default position is
You don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so therefore, when you see the world that we live in, It's not. Is that part of the evidence? Or will you consider that as part of the evidence?
The earth, and he said that I don't know if it's you say the earth and heavens are evidence for God. No, the earth is evidence for earth. This pen is an evidence for a pen. I cannot say this evidence is an evidence for him that he exists. And actually, just to steal 1 minute, he said that if God does not exist, life is meaningless.
Yeah.
This is like, you see, what would be the alternative? Now, but this is like saying, because he's saying that it's meaningless because it doesn't matter eventually what happens. This is like saying you're not going to go to a party because eventually the party will be over at some point. Now, the party is fun while it lasts. You get it?
Okay.
And number two, even if life would be meaningless without God, even if I was to prove there is no God and life is meaningless, the alternative of saying, okay, the claim of God gives people's life meaning as much as it's false, so let's believe it. That would also not be a bad option. Well, actually, I would say not a bad option. If I know some people who, I don't believe Christianity is true, but I have seen some people who their belief in religion has given some sense of meaning. I would want them to believe in that, as long as they don't make it a claim of fact for everybody. The point is, I don't have a problem with someone believing something false if it gives them some sort of hope and solace. But because I use a lot of logic, I cannot be convinced. I know it's not true. It's hard for me to go to be counter to be convinced.
Okay.
I need to clarify 2 things. Number one, remember the question was, why does it matter? So that's why I was saying, if God doesn't exist, then what we are doing is a waste of time. Notice it is not an argument for the existence of God. Because even if, rightfully as you said, even if we live as if the world is meaningful and there is no God, eventually it is meaningless. Whether you believe it, whether you live as if it does, it is meaningless. So this is not an argument for the existence of God. What it is an argument for the illogical nature of atheism. Because the atheist lives as if life has meaning, and yet wants to perpetuate the idea that eventually it is meaningless. You live as if life has value, because, for example, you will say it is not fair. You will talk about slavery like we talked about. You talk about all these evils. But again, remember, if there's no God, then value and non-value are 2 equal opposing ideas. And why, I don't know why we should pick one over the other. So, for example, slavery could be equally good and equally bad, and there's nothing wrong. We could still own slaves, not own slaves, no difference. But if God exists, the human being has value. You see where I'm going? So, while this is not an argument for God, it is an argument that if you're going to have a worldview, your worldview has to also be livable. That is, you have to live consistent with what you believe. So that on one side, it sounds very nice to say that there is no God, but I am saying you cannot live your life as if there is no God. That one has to keep, in fact, it is Frank Turek who calls it stealing from God. You have to keep stealing from the Christian worldview, bring meaning into the picture, then live as if life has meaning, but then on this other hand, deny the existence of God.
Does meaning necessarily have to come from God? Or can
Yes.
we create our own meaning?
That's the point. The created meaning is a delusion. You have created it. So, is it objectively meaningful, or is it just a subjective experience that you are having lying to yourself? It's like someone who consider a person who sits on the road and says, I am the president of Kenya. That for him is meaningful, isn't it? It's what he is experiencing. But he will never be, he is not the president of Kenya at that point. So the objective reality is that there's a president of Kenya and he's only one, right? But there are many people, for example, in Mathare who wake up every day believing, and I'm not saying atheism is, please, I hope you don't understand that's what I'm saying about atheism. I would want to be very respectful so that you don't feel like, that's not what I'm saying, okay?
No problem.
I'm not saying that, and I do not want to even insult you in that sense, okay? But all I'm saying is that the idea of created meaning is a delusion. It is an idea that you are creating that does not exist, but it is helpful for you to live. All I'm saying is, life does not accord you that opportunity. If you create meaning and finding it meaningful, it means the universe needs to be meaningful.
Are you using the word meaning and purpose interchangeably?
No, I know I'm talking about meaning, and then there's purpose, means direction of
different?
life. Yeah, they are different, because purpose would mean directionality. Okay, and again, that's another reason why I think God exists. For example, think about evolution and science. We say science is changing, it is improving, isn't it? If it didn't have a direction, if it didn't have a place where it is taking us, then what is it doing? Because what does it mean that science is improving? Does it mean that when we have a microphone, rather than shouting with our mouths, that we have improved? There has to be a direction that is taking us. And this is where religion comes in very handy, because religion gives us the sense of direction, so that science, when it is improving, we can say we are becoming better because we have a goal. There's a place where it is taking us.
Now, Maurice, just something to help us. Why should anyone, and I know that maybe that is not your objective, but why should anyone buy to the philosophy of atheism? And I'm coming from a concept like we shared before we came here. Like King David captured, I'm not sure if you believe he was there, but King David captured that. The idea of existence of God, that there are people who do not believe in God, believe that God is there, over 3,000 years ago. And it's like, it's really taking a slower pace for people to even buy to that philosophy of non-existence of God. So why should someone even buy to that philosophy?
Why? First of all, you have to know why it is taking a slow pace. Because for the last 2,000 years, over 80% of that time, the church has been, specifically the Catholic Church, has been in charge of the politics. You know, things like in Europe, like during, he asked why the atheists were not the one discovering these scientific things. Nobody else was there to do the job. You come out as an atheist.
No, they were there.
Of course,
They were there, and some were in parliament.
You know that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like saying, it's like in this room there are only black people. So anything that happened in this room will be done by a black person. So that time there were only Christians. It was illegal. It was punishable by death to be a heresy.
No.
So yeah,
To be heretic.
Yeah, to be heretic.
No,
yes.
they were heretics even then.
Yeah, but they were punishable by death. So most people would not want to
be heretics.
to contravene the law.
In 17th century England.
Yep. People. That's why people like the person who discovered the Galileo, they ended up in prison. The one who wrote the evolutionary theory,
Darwin. Those
Darwin,
are different.
He had to wait until the end of his life to publish his work, because he was not aware how the Victorian authority would react to the fact that he's studying the creation story. So, to answer your question, there was nobody else. Even a bridge that was built, it has to be built by Chris, and they were the one who were there. The other question you asked about, what was the other question? Why?
Yes.
Why it matters, as I said, and also that alludes to his question. There are two things. There's value, there's meaning in life. The way he's saying, this thing gives people meaning. That's okay if it's a claim that gives people meaning. It's okay, give it meaning. But my question is it true? The question is, I want people to believe things that are true as possible and few things that are false as possible.
And they're only true if there's evidence.
Yeah, there will be not another alternative.
There's a lot of alternatives, my friend. Because
anything other than evidence would be guesswork.
Not guesswork. Number one, in life, we all need elements of faith to organize our lives, to live our lives.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, did you have any evidence that this chair will support your weight before you sat on it?
No. But I have empirical data over time.
There's some chairs support people.
Yeah.
But there's also evidence, or at least it has happened in the past, that you will sit on a chair and it breaks.
Yeah.
Or at least I've broken one. Yeah. Yeah. But you looked at this chair without any evidence, you sat on it.
Exactly.
You walked inside this building. You have had buildings collapsing, even in this country.
Yeah.
Did you have any evidence that this building will hold for the duration of the year?
I have evidence.
What evidence was there? Because
it's
it was held in the past.
It was held yesterday, the day before yesterday.
That's induction.
So
I'm
even
not
today-
100% sure it
So
will
even
hold.
today it will hold, isn't it?
I'm not 100% sure it will hold, but I'm 90
But
point
will
something
you-
percent sure
if
because
it-
it has done that in the past.
If it has done in the past, so therefore it can do it even today.
Yeah,
That was your.
yeah. On a balance of probability, it's more likely to hold than not.
That's induction.
But even the buildings that have collapsed, they did not collapse the day they were constructed.
Yeah.
Of course.
People lived in them, or some of them people lived in them, and then later on they collapsed.
Yeah. So,
So-
of course, I agree with you. At some point, there are things
Maybe he
that
can finish his point.
Okay.
There is
Eh,
maybe
so-
where he was heading, and then now you can
So my
respond.
point is that you cannot, the way the atheists are putting it, that unless we have empirical, proven evidence, we cannot believe in anything. But I'm telling you, the position of the Christian God or the biblical God, first of all, we need to have faith in Him, because in life we need elements of faith to organize our lives. But even the God of the Bible, He is not just saying, believe in me, irrespective of the
blindly, yeah.
contrary, evidence to the contrary. Just as you say, you walked in this building based on the past experiences. Several times in the Bible, when you read, God gives His CV. Say, I'm the God who did this, who did this, who did this. Therefore, based on this, believe me that I will also do this thing. Yeah, so it's not just a blind faith. And as I said earlier on, we believe a lot of things that we cannot explain. Even just a simple thing as getting with the matatu. How sure are you that that driver is not drunk?
Yes, Maurice. No, you can respond, and then as Maurice responds, I want you, Mark, to think of what's the place of empirical and rational kind of evidences in terms of as a theologian or as an apologist.
So I agree. Sometimes you don't have to. You see, it is so dependent. There is a claim that there's the argument that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Ordinary claims require ordinary evidence. So it's not every claim evidence has to rise to the scientific level. If you tell me that you have bought a new car, I know cars exist. I know people buy cars. I might not have seen it, but I can even start planning how we are going to visit Nakuru with their car without seeing it, because I have seen cars before. I know people actually buy a car. If you told me you bought a pet, I would believe you because I know pets exist, and pets are normal. People keep pets. But if you tell me, if you tell me the pet you bought is the one that cooked dinner yesterday, that is not extraordinary, but it's quite
not
a claim, because
ordinary.
I know pets have been trained to do big things. So that one I might not take it at surface value. I might want to come and see it doing it. But if you tell me that the pet you have normally takes a trip to Jupiter and come back regularly, and it's the one controlling our life and all those claims, then now that's an extraordinary evidence. But if I would want not just to see the evidence, I might even see it leaving the space, and I still might not believe it because of I will need extraordinary evidence to support such an extraordinary claim. So ordinary claims, like, of course, in ordinary life, we use a lot of things that we have not seen. Data, there are things we do without using empirical evidence, but we use past experience most of the time.
Maybe just a quick before I bring in. Why then do you want to subject God's existence to not the ordinary?
Because it's an extraordinary claim that there is a creator looking at us, in charge of everything, who knows everything, who is all powerful, all good, all. Number one is because it's an extraordinary claim. Number two is because of the impact of that claim on the society, in a religious society, as I said, in public policy, I
know that makes them smile.
Yeah.
At least they know there is impact.
Yeah. Of course, the religion has a lot of impact in every society, especially in Kenya.
Good impact or bad?
Both. Yes, both. And I wish even if it was false, I wish it could just have a good impact. Then we would let it thrive. But it's very powerful in Kenya and in Africa. So that's why we are challenging it. The question is why. That's why we are challenging it. And I think because it is praised, like there's nothing you can do in Kenya politically without religion. And politics, of course, is what defines how we live among each other. So yeah, that's why we have to challenge that claim.
Okay.
It affects
Yes.
affects the kind of development. It can affect the school we build. It affects our curriculum. It affects everything. So of course, that's why we want that whatever happens in public sphere be based on evidence
Okay.
and data.